The Texas Longhorns are absolutely a college football playoff team. Everything that I saw from this team this weekend proved to me that they are one of the 12 best teams in the nation, and I have no more doubts about this squad. Originally, I wanted to see more. I wanted to see this transition from Arch from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. That's ultimately what you're looking for, a quarterback that had all of the expectations and pressure in the world to deliver on the biggest stage. You go into Ohio State, the reigning defending champs, in week one, and you struggle a little bit. And I was excited to see how he would develop throughout a 12-week season. And ladies and gentlemen, when I tell you he looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the country right now, I say that with no doubts. He has been playing at such a high level. And in this Texas A&M game, he looked confident. He looked strong in the pocket. He was making big-time throws, using his legs when he needed to. And I think that Arch Manning has proven that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do next year. But ultimately, I think we're trending towards a spot right now where Texas is going to get left out of the playoff, and I really disagree with it. I'm here to say right now that this is absolutely one of the 12 best teams in the nation, and I'm going to break it all down for you guys today. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Caden Kubler. And thank you guys so much for tuning into the video. This was a dominant win over Texas A&M, the third best team in the country, an undefeated SEC team that was most likely going to be the number one team in the SEC when it was all said and done, when the college football playoff bracket came to fruition here in a week. But Texas had other plans. They needed this win to give themselves a shot. And we're headed towards a spot where if Texas gets in with 3 losses, there's going to be a lot of controversy. People are going to be saying it's SEC ESPN. A lot of people are going to say there's some bias going on there. I disagree. I look at a lot of the teams in front of them and say I can confidently tell you guys that Texas is absolutely better than them. I think they have an unbelievable resume to start. Texas has really strung things together well throughout this second half of the season. Things got really bumpy there for a little bit. Obviously, as I mentioned, they lost on the road to Ohio State in a tough game. Although they outgained them by 200 yards, they would ultimately lose week one against Ohio State. And a lot of people were off the Arch train. But then you go to the Swamp for the first game in SEC play and you lose that game. And a lot of people were saying this was it for Texas, because in this new era of the college football playoff, now that it's at 12 teams, we've yet to see a squad get in there with 3 losses in the regular season. And for Texas, they were 3-2. You already had 2 losses, and you've got to win out. And you're still playing Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, Georgia, and Texas A&M. 4 top 9 teams in the country. Will they take care of business against Oklahoma? They get hot. They beat Vanderbilt. They obviously lose to Georgia, but then they beat Texas A&M. And I think this resume for Texas is really, really solid with everything considered. As I mentioned, you beat a really good Oklahoma team who was 6th in the country at the time. You beat a really solid Vanderbilt team who right now is in front of you in the SEC. You beat them, who is ranked number 9 in the country. And then you beat Texas A&M, who is ranked 3rd in the country. So right now, that's 3 top 10 wins in the nation. And not a lot of teams in college football can say and go to the committee and present them with a resume that has 3 top 10 wins in the nation. Now, you can evaluate these losses. As I mentioned, they outgained Ohio State in a big-time way in week 1, but they would ultimately lose this game. They had a shot to win it in the 4th quarter. They looked anemic for about 3.5 quarters there, but had a shot at the very end to get it done, and you lose to the reigning defending champs in week 1. Ohio State has been the number 1 team in the country all season long. They have not moved an inch. That's one of your losses. Another one of your losses, you go on the road and play Georgia. Ladies and gentlemen, Georgia is going to have a very legitimate shot if they win in the SEC championship, which they are the favorites in. If they beat Alabama in the SEC championship and Indiana loses to Ohio State, which, newsflash, that's most likely going to happen, you are looking at Texas losing to the number 1 and number 2 teams in college football on the road, and yet we're going to sit here and penalize them in a big time way for that. I can go here with Oklahoma and talk about their 2 losses. You lose to Texas and you lost to Ole Miss at home. Those 2 losses are not the same as losing to number 1 and number 2 in the country. You can also go to a team like Oregon. Although they have 1 loss, they really don't have that many impressive wins on the season, to be quite honest with you, and I'm not going to sit here and make an argument that Texas has a better shot or should be in over Oregon, but I think if you're really evaluating the 12 best teams in the country, I think Texas right now has a better resume than what Oregon brings to the table. You look at a Utah team as of right now that has 2 losses, that is currently standing in front of Texas. They have 2 losses. They lost to Texas Tech and they lost to BYU. I'm getting a little excited here. I accidentally just popped my desk. But they're 2 losses. You lose to BYU and you lose to Texas Tech. Those losses do not compare to what Texas has right now. The point I'm trying to make here, ladies and gentlemen, is that Texas, although everybody's sitting here saying, well, Caden, they have 3 losses, they should just be excluded from having any sort of shot at making the playoff. Once you get that 3rd loss, your time is up. I hear you with that argument. I really do. And I understand them losing to Florida in the swamp. And quite frankly, that's a tough environment. That's not an easy game for anyone. I understand it. But the point I'm trying to make here is that 2 of their losses are going to come on the road against Ohio State, who's going to be the number 1 team in the country. They've been the number 1 team in the country all season long. Another one of their losses is going to come on the road against Georgia. And yes, the final score, in my opinion, is not indicative of how close this game was. I believe it was 14-10 going into the 4th quarter. Georgia made some big time plays. They have that onside kick, whatever. If you're really evaluating that game, it was a lot closer than what the score would tell you. And although you lose to Florida and you pick up that 3rd loss, I just can't sit here and get behind, hey, this team has 2 losses to the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country. Definitively, I can't sit here and tell you that I agree with that when I have a lot of other teams in front of them that really haven't necessarily earned their stripes and should have this resume that would lead you to believe that they are better, like Vanderbilt. They lost to Texas. Vanderbilt lost to Alabama. Those are their 2 losses. When I go through Vanderbilt's schedule, ladies and gentlemen, they beat LSU, who was a top 10 team in the country at the time, but that's their only top 10 win in the entirety of the country. They beat South Carolina, who's completely fallen off of a cliff. They beat Missouri, who kind of fell off a cliff after the Bo Pribula injury. They beat Tennessee, and Tennessee is realistically a team with 4 losses. How much weight do you want to give that? Where is a good win on this Vanderbilt schedule? I can't find it when I go through it. So to me, I can't sit here and tell you that Vanderbilt's a better football team. And you can go through resume for resume with a lot of these opponents. One of the final points I'll leave you guys with here is that the committee is setting a terrible precedent in college football when it comes to the non-conference schedule. Listen, we don't want to see Alabama play Furman. We don't want to see Ole Miss play just an absolute garbage team. We don't want to see Texas play San Jose State. We don't want to see these really good SEC teams or Big Ten teams play just horrible squads. We want to see some really good matchups in the non-conference games. But if you're the college football playoff committee, you're basically incentivizing every school to schedule as bad of non-conference opponents as they possibly can so that they avoid getting any losses. Even if you're playing the number 1 team in the country who just won the national championship, you are incentivizing Texas to schedule Furman, to continue to schedule San Jose State, to continue to schedule these really bad teams just so that they can be 3-0 by the time their non-conference is over with. And once they're done with that, then they can go through the SEC schedule. And as long as you know you only have 2 losses, you're fine and dandy and you're good to go. Like that's terrible in my opinion. You're setting a terrible precedent for college football. I don't care if they are 9-3. I don't care that they have 3 losses when 2 of their losses have come against absolute Goliaths. I don't care. The College Football Playoff Committee's job is to find the 12 best teams in the nation. Are you going to seriously sit here and tell me that Tulane or JMU is a better football team than Texas? And I understand they've got to appease to everybody, so they got to put in a group of 5 team. It's like, what are we doing here? Duke, for the love of goodness gracious, is in the ACC championship. And although they don't have a good shot, they potentially have an opportunity to get in as a college football playoff team. Virginia, are we going to seriously sit here and say that Virginia is a better football team than Texas? Like, I can go through and find a bunch of teams that aren't better than Texas. And as of right now, you've got to sit here and look at the way that this team was trending. This team was trending in the right direction. They were 3-2. They finished the season 9-3. They won 6 out of their last 7 games, no pun intended, in six of those wins. Ladies and gentlemen, they beat 3 top 10 teams, and the only game they lost was against most likely the number 2 team in the country. Look at the way this team was trending. Arch Manning playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the country. This defense, one of the best in the nation, led by Colin Simmons. Like, this Texas football team is easily one of the 12 best teams in the nation. And yet, because they have 3 losses, we're going to sit here and exclude them from the college football playoff. I completely disagree with it. I think college football as a whole is in a really weird spot right now, especially with the NIL, especially with this whole Lane Kiffin thing, with him really leaving before the college football playoff and a lot of the players following him most likely, and some of his coaching staff leaving. I think that's not setting a good precedent for college football. And I think also, if you have a team that is scheduling the number 1 team in the country, the team that just won, and not only won, but hammered everybody in the college football playoff on their path to winning a national championship, you are going to discredit them because they played that game. I think it's utter bogus, and I think it would be a disservice to college football if they left Texas out of the college football playoff. I have no doubts in my mind that they are one of the 12 best teams in the nation. I think it would be an abomination to the sport. They need to get this right. They need to put Texas in the college football playoff. I want to see Arch. I want to see this defense. I want to see what they're made of. But ultimately, I don't have a good feeling. I don't think, after evaluating everything I saw this weekend, after Utah's had 2 close scares in a row, even though they're in front of them, Miami, they have 2 losses, but they beat Notre Dame. So, maybe that's going to help them get in. Like, I just look at these teams and think, man, most of them aren't better than Texas. And you put them on a neutral field, I think Texas is as good as anybody in the country. And it goes back to that Ohio State game in week 1. And even against Georgia, like, those are the 2 best teams in the country. And Texas had a legitimate shot in both of those games, although the score didn't ultimately come out in their direction and in their favor. But ladies and gentlemen, we'll see what happens. I'll have a reaction video after the College Football Playoff Committee ultimately makes a decision next weekend after the conference championship games happen. But I appreciate you guys watching the show today. My name is Caden Kubler, and we'll see you guys next time.